What if I tell you the war we are seeing in the Middle East right now is not just another Middle East conflict? What if it's a fight over the survival of Iran's entire political system? Because in Tehran's view, this is not just a war, it is what they call an imposed war, a war forced in Iran by outside powers. And according to Iranian leaders, this is the third such war in modern history. Iran says three major wars were forced upon it. The first was the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988. The second was the 12-day war in June 2025, when Israel launched attacks and the United States joined. And now, the third war, the one that began February 28, 2026, when Israel and the US launched strikes on Iran. But here is something many people don't realize. Despite the fiery speeches and military parades, Iran's leadership has historically tried to avoid a direct war. Why? Because wars are politically dangerous and economically devastating. Instead, Tehran usually prefers something else: negotiations, delay, strategic patience. The tension between Iran and the West really escalated in 2002. That's when satellite images exposed Iran's Natanz nuclear facility. Suddenly, the world was worried about Iran's nuclear program. But Iran didn't respond with war. Instead, it entered years of negotiations with world powers. These talks eventually led to the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA. For a while, tensions cooled. But everything changed in 2018. That year, Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the nuclear deal. Washington launched a policy called maximum pressure. Sanctions tightened, Iran's economy suffered, and tensions shot up. Then came another shock in January 2020. The United States assassinated General Qasem Soleimani, the man behind Iran's regional strategy. That moment pushed the region dangerously close to war. But the real chain reaction began later. After the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, the geopolitical landscape changed dramatically. Israeli leaders argued that Iran's support for Hamas made Tehran responsible for the attack. From that point on, Iran moved higher on Israel's list of strategic targets. Israel began weakening Iran's regional allies, Hezbollah, other groups across the region. Then came a major escalation in April 2024. The Iranian consulate in Damascus was bombed, widely believed to be an Israeli strike. Those attacks looked like preparations for something bigger. And that bigger confrontation arrived in June 2025. In June 2025, Israel, with US support, launched major strikes on Iran. Key nuclear facilities were targeted: Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan. The fighting eventually stopped, but the tension never disappeared. Both sides began preparing for another round of confrontation. And that round came in 2026. On February 28, 2026, Israel and the US launched new attacks on Iran. But this time, the stakes were even higher. Iranian leaders increasingly believed the goal was not just nuclear facilities, but regime change. Then came the biggest shock of all. Supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated, along with several senior commanders. For Tehran, that transformed the conflict into something much bigger, an existential war. But Iran is not trying to win this war in a traditional way. Instead, its strategy is simple: make the war too expensive for everyone. That's why Iran has targeted energy infrastructure and oil routes, including the critical Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 20% of the world's oil passes through that narrow waterway. Even small disruptions there can send global energy prices soaring. Iran's message is clear: if the goal is to overthrow the government in Tehran, then the entire region and possibly the global economy will pay the price. At the same time, analysts say Israel and the US may also be trying a different strategy. Instead of invading Iran directly, something that would require massive ground forces, they could attempt to destabilize the country from within. That means supporting opposition groups and creating pressure inside Iran. Tehran is already tightening security and deploying forces near sensitive border regions. So where does this leave the world? The 2026 Iran war may not be about territory. It may not be about nuclear facilities anymore. Instead, it could become a struggle over the survival of Iran's political system itself. And as both sides escalate, the risk grows that this regional conflict could trigger global economic and geopolitical shock waves. Because in the Middle East, wars rarely stay contained.